Hi, this is Dan Z from Coffee with Kenobi, and you are listening to Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age. Aaron, you do it better, buddy. I did my best.
There's been an awakening. Have you felt it?
In 1977, George Lucas formed a legacy.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
Inspired by mythology, his saga has become a passion for many.
Feel the Force around you.
His legend has become our story.
It's true. All.
One of resistance,
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll bring the First Order down.
rebellion,
Rebellion is built on hope.
and redemption.
I am a Jedi, like my father before.
This is Star Wars Reactions.
Remember, the Force will be with you. Always.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Star Wars Reactions. We are so happy to have you back joining us this week for the 210th episode. We are going to have so much fun finally getting to sit down and talk about the series not series, it doesn't say series, it says season finale, because season finale is a lot more hopeful than series finale. Season finale of Skeleton Crew. So let's get an introduction out of the way and let's jump into our discussion here. My name is Aaron Harrison. Joining me, he is the Chewbacca to my Han, the David Motters. David, brother, how you doing?
I'm doing really good, man. And, back in, what was it, August? I think it was August that they did the trailer for this series. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, we got to get through all of September, all of October, all of November to get to December 3rd, when it actually, then they did a day early, December 2nd. And now we are in January, and we knew that this show would end on January 14th. And we're there. Season finale, hopefully. When you said series finale, I think that was a Freudian slip. You were probably thinking that's going to be a series finale, and it probably will be, but we're hopeful that it's a season finale. But I am ready to react to it, and looking forward to talking to you about this awesome episode 8 of Skeleton Crew, man.
Oh, yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to discussing this. And, of course, the future of Skeleton Crew is something we'll discuss toward the end of the episode. But, let's talk about this finale, because this is everything we have seen these first 7 episodes built up to this one, entitled The Real Good Guys, released January 14th, 2025, directed by John Watts and written by Christopher Ford and John Watts. The synopsis ripped straight from StarWars.com. Back home on Atten, Wim, Fern, KB, and Neil have been reunited with their families. Reunited, and it feels so good.
Yes.
But face a dangerous threat in Jod, who continues to pose as a Republic emissary. With Fern and her mother, Farah, trapped in the supervisor's tower with Jod, it's up to KB, Neil, and Wim and his dad, Wendell, to stop a pirate invasion from taking over their home. Dun, dun, dun. Whew. Okay, there's a lot to be said about this episode, so let's jump into it. And hope y'all enjoyed your weekly free serenade. So, David, kick us off, my friend. What are your initial reactions to the season finale, The Real Good Guys?
Yeah, I kind of made it really short and sweet, because we do have so much to cover in talking points, and I want to really hit those. You put in some, I put in some, and I'm going to leave it for them, because this will be really fun to talk about this whole episode. But I would say this as an initial reaction, that Aaron and I know that Star Wars fans have been worried about various Star Wars streaming series sticking the landing, and I guess even non-Star Wars ones.
Mhm.
They're about other series. Does Lost do it or not? Did Game of Thrones do it or not, etc.? Did Seinfeld back in the day? But I tell you, I do believe that, Aaron and I were confident they would land it. I think a lot of people were confident because there was a lot of data from the first 7 episodes that they would land this, and I believe they did it. That's my opinion, but I think it's even more than that. I really, I think on so many levels they really landed this. Hopefully, season finale. What do you think, buddy?
Yeah, keeping it short and sweet. Boom.
Yeah.
It was boom. It was a fantastic finale. It closed out the story that we were watching, but left in pure Filoni fashion. Closed out the story, but left several questions that still need to be answered. So definitely left you open for more if they chose to do it. But it was fantastic. I loved it. It was to me, it was the perfect ending to a fantastic story. And let's talk about that. Because there were a ton of mysteries revealed, lots of questions answered, and a ton more questions left unanswered. Well, not necessarily left unanswered, but new questions that we never got the answer. Well, yeah, they were unanswered, weren't they? Anywho.
Yeah.
Of course, the episode opens. We are in the vault. The kids just been reunited with their parents. And of course, Jod is the parents are thanking Jod and for all they did and saying, I hope they weren't trouble. And he's like, oh yeah, they're trouble. They're in big trouble. They're in tons of trouble. Matter of fact, confine them to their rooms and have security droids watch them and basically bans them all away, but decides to keep Fern and her mom as kind of assurance because they can get her, the mother can get her into see the supervisor. And of course, why does he need the supervisor? Because he needs to get the pirate ship safely through the barrier. And the only one who can grant that is the supervisor, who's way up in that very tall tower. So they end up heading off to the tower, which is quite an interesting trip. You see them in the elevator, and that tall elevator riding up to the top, and it opens up and they walk out and you see all these computer desks and controllers and everything, and everything. There's nobody there. It's all abandoned. There's nobody there. There's dust inches thick on these chairs where people would be sitting. There's just nobody to be seen. And all of a sudden, this center area, this big center buildup area kind of rotates around, and there's this big red and blue eye in the center. And your supervisor's a droid.
Right.
This would be HAL 4000. I mean, it was,
Yeah.
I'll say I did not expect a droid. Did not expect that.
You thought a person? You thought it'd be a live person?
I thought it'd be a live person. I honestly thought it was going to end up being Tak Renaud.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the pirate. Yeah.
I seriously thought, especially with the ship crash landed there, buried in there, I figured to protect it, he stayed because he realized it was a wonderful place to be. But no, it's a droid, and got us a little bit of 2001: A Space Odyssey going on there with Hal. But the supervisor, of course, was, which I enjoyed the fact that they got Stephen Fry to do the voice of the supervisor.
Yeah, yeah.
And for those of you who recognize the voice but don't recognize the name, Mr. Fry, he was if you ever saw the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Stephen Fry was the voice of the galaxy. No, he was the narrator and the voice of the galaxy. Um, which I really, that was just a fun, crazy movie. Okay. That was just fun. The book was great. Movie was good. So, but yeah, he was in that. And that's how I recognized him almost immediately at that point. But it was fun. It was fun to get a great actor like him to do the voice of that. But it was really, and of course, what's awesome too is we find out the supervisor is not ignorant of things that have occurred in the galaxy, because the supervisor is what communicated with the Republic. And John introduces himself as the emissary and the Jedi, and needs to communicate to his ship, and so he can bring his ship down. And of course, the supervisor's like, yeah, sure, we could do that. This will be great. No problem. I just need you to clarify something for me, though. And John looks at the droid and goes, so the last message we got from the Republic said the Jedi were traitors and were all killed. So are you lying about being the emissary, or are you lying about being a Jedi? And you see John he's just instantly caught. And of course, that opens the door for Fern to finally spill the beans about what's going on. He's a pirate. They're trying to invade and rob the vault. And of course, John shoots her a look, and the supervisor's like, figured it. So like, yeah, I knew it. And orders the security droids to step in and take over. And of course, they start shooting at him. And of course, everything is on stun. And they're like, don't put your weapon down or you will be stunned. Put your weapon down or you will be stunned. Just like annoying. These were annoying B1 droids.
Yeah.
I would have much rather had B1 droids than these guys, because these guys were annoying to a certain extent. And of course, he does the one thing I did not expect, which is this was an Anakin move, in my opinion. This was a pure out Anakin move. He turns and he drives that lightsaber into the big red eye of Supervisor HAL 4000, causing it to have a complete and total meltdown and destroys the supervisor, which in doing so causes all the electronics, all the electricity, all the electronics on the planet to just stop working. Tell me how that works. I'm curious at how destroying the supervisor shut off all the power to the planet, made all the cars and vehicles stop working. I mean, that just kind of, I could see power maybe, but how do your independently floating vehicles stop functioning?
Yeah.
Because the power grid goes out.
Well, it's a massive vulnerability, right? I mean, that's why no one's up there to do that, and you made me think that Anakin moved from the standpoint in episode 1 when Anakin destroys the control ship, the Trade Federation control ship, all the battle droids just shut down, they're on Naboo. And you made me think about it. Jod doing this makes all these droids just shut down. So very much I hadn't put this in the show notes, but very much an Easter egg back to, in essence, or an homage basically back to episode 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, that's a little, I can understand that somewhat, because they're getting their orders from the ship. The battle droids were getting their orders from the command ship that Anakin destroyed. Just like these security droids would be getting their commands and orders and are being controlled by Supervisor HAL 4000.
Right.
And of course, at that point, nope, not happening. The power goes out, everybody goes out. And of course, at that point, because Jod was threatening Fern, at that point, Farah, Supervisor, Farah, decides to help John bring his ship through the maelstrom. And next thing we know, we have pirates running everywhere. And the invasion of Atten begins, which is quite a fun invasion. We have the pirates flying around everywhere. Meanwhile, we have Neil, KB, and Wim and Wendell all on the only functioning vehicles on the planet, which of course are their little scooter bikes.
Hover bikes.
Hover bikes. Yeah, they're like little scooters.
Yeah,
they're hover bikes. And now, how are those working and the cars aren't?
These are questions we have, but we just got to go past it. This is the suspension of disbelief at this point. Okay.
Oh, there's a lot of that in this one. So,
oh, yes. Oh, there's a lot.
There's a lot of that in this one. But so they take off on their speeder bikes. Wendell steals a hover bike from a kid and takes off after him. And of course, pirates start chasing them, and they take a shortcut through the woods. And then, of course, we go all Evel Knievel and jump cliffs, jump the ravine that they got stuck in at the beginning of the episode, and or beginning of the season, I should say. And they continue on their way. So let's get talked about the point we're at right now. What were your thoughts with, the pirates are finally getting through the shield and the invasion of Atten beginning?
Oh, it's super cool. Super cool. I love it. And just how they made, Wim and his dad come out and seeing the big pirate ship come down right through the clouds. I love Neil Nation, right? Here we go. Neil's back in the bathtub and he looks out his window and sees that thing coming. I just thought that was great. And then, the excitement is on, to see all those pirates come out and come into the neighborhoods. And, we see our dark time, our downtime. But then Vane has a great time chasing Wim and Wendell. And I guess who else? KB and Neil all over, particularly back to the school, which is actually pretty critical because of what we saw in the Ad Akron episode, right? You can see it all play together, right? I was like, wait a minute, Neil knows where that big turbo laser is. And so I thought that was cool how he went up there and did that. And it just all was really coming together. I thought it was great action. And back to what you said, in our previous episode covering episode 7, how they, pack so much into a half hour. This one, it said running time 40 minutes, credits, it's a little bit less, but same thing. I'm like, wait, how are they going to get this all done? Particularly when you find out that, KB needs to get outside the barrier to send a message to Kim. And you're like, wait, there's not enough time. I mean, I just checked the minutes but they quickly get Wendell and Wim over to the supervisor's tower to help get the power back on so that she can take off. But there's a lot of great action through this whole thing. Edge of your seat kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Edge of the seat stuff. It is so much, so incredible action, especially as Vane is chasing the kids through the forest as they're trying to make their way to the tower to rescue, or trying to get to the ship, to the Onyx Cinder, to get a message off to get to Kim. They did what you said. They go to contact Kim to get help from the Republic. To get the good guys, the X-Wings. your friends in the X-Wings. I love how KB put that. And they get to the ship, and of course it is completely locked down because, as we saw in the last episode, when it landed, the locks locked down on the landing gear. Basically, I assume it's to keep it from shifting around while it's down in the vault.
Yeah, I agree.
It went underground. So then, of course, they're like, you can't get them off. Her Wendell's like, you can't get them off without power. And Wim looks at him and goes, "Can you do that?" And I love this moment between Wim and Wendell because it really restored Wim's faith in his father at this point. He looks at him and goes, "I'm a level 7 and what did he call himself? A level, what is it? Level 7 systems coordinator. I'm a level 7 systems coordinator. Get the bike." So he grabs the bike, cracks this huge grin and grabs the bike, and they take off toward the supervisor tower to try to get the power back on so that KB can fly off and call the cavalry. So being a dad, I want to get your opinion on this whole interaction between Wim and Wendell in this scene as they're hatching their plan to get the Onyx Cinder off the ground. What were your thoughts on Wendell and Wim's interaction there?
Well, there's a lot. I think, his response when he finally says, "I'm a level systems analyst, get the bike," it's finally his dad deciding, let's get outside the controlled, safe, don't take any risk kind of point of view. Now, again, he did get on the hover bike and is blasting all over the place, but you feel like he's really starting to embrace it even more at that point, embracing the adventure. And it's fun to see that, because, part of, and I'll talk about this a little bit towards the end, when we look at the show overall is, part of what we deal with as adults as we get into the everydayness, like our heroes here, their parents are into the everydayness of life. I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. I talk about it with my clients for over 30 years. Can you deal with the everydayness of life? And so as adults, we can get pulled into that. So it's so neat to not only see the kids get pulled into an adventure, but then these parents are part of it as well. And we all want some excitement. We all want some fun. And so I enjoyed seeing this. His dad kind of like the Onyx Cinder shed its skin 2 episodes ago there on Lanupa. You kind of see his dad shedding his skin and really fully embracing the excitement of that adventure. So I thought it was pretty cool. How about you?
I think it is incredible. I loved the reaction because it, at the beginning when this series premiered in the first episode, you see the dad, Wim and Wendell, their relationship struggling. There's dad is a little too almost a little too serious and bound up in his job, and I think he's still trying to get used to the single father hood, because we find out later that his mom is gone. And so I think he's somebody who's trying to be a good dad, but is also struggling at the same point. So seeing this scene for me just really warmed. It was really a heartwarming event because we see the dad stepping up to the plate and we see the son looking at him going, "All right, Dad." He's got some little bit of pride there in his dad again. And they go off to try to save the day.
Yeah, it was cool.
It really was. And, what I liked about their plan is they get to the tower, they get up into the elevator opens, Jod turns around, has a blaster point out, and out walks Wim by himself, hands in the air. And as the camera pulls back a little bit into the elevator, you see Wendell kind of pressed up tight against the wall where Jod can't see him, kind of playing hide and seek here. And Wim starts spinning this wonderful story about how he's called the X-Wings. And Jod's like, "You can't transmit through the barrier." He's like, "Oh, but you got to have the crystal of the founders. I found it a while ago, and that allows me to talk through the barrier. And I called the X-Wings, and the army of the Jedi are coming." And of course, we all know at this point the Jedi are gone. And Wim, Jod looks at him and goes, Wim, the Jedi are dead. And then Fern's like, that's what they want you to think. And I'm like, Fern's jumping into this fantasy story of Wim's because she sees Wendell sneaking in to try to do something. And of course, Wendell gets in, he gets over, they're spinning the story, and all of a sudden, Wendell gets the power turned back on. All the lights start coming back on, everything starts powering back up. And of course, Jod starts chasing Wendell, and everything goes insane and crazy again. But unfortunately, Jod gets control of it. He shoots his blaster, knocks, almost gets Fern, but her mom saved her. And he gets control of them, gets them all in one corner where he can talk to him. And of course, there's this handle that they get raised out of the ground that was hidden away that will not only allow the pirate ship to come through, but it also destroys the barrier. And of course, he does like, I don't want to destroy anything. I love it. And this is where, Jod has a very, you kind of, Jod's a confusing character for me, because you see him being compassionate with these kids all through the series. He's got his mean streak. He's got his devious side, but there's also a little bit of compassion in there. And we see it. And of course, he is getting so frustrated at this point. He's like, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to destroy anything. He's like, I love your great work. It's great. It's a beautiful thing. I just want y'all to work in the Mint just like every other day. Just live your lives like normal. Just do it. Yeah. Yeah. And I can't tell when he's given that speech if it is just something he's just trying to do to manipulate Fern's mom, or if it's Farrah, or if it's he's really conflicted about what's happening. Which I gotta say, darn good acting by Jude Law.
Oh, agreed. Incredible.
Because he just does not want, he gives you the impression he just doesn't want anything to happen here. He just wants things to be normal. He just wants the credits. So it's really unique situation he's got himself in here, which has him playing almost, I want to say, mental chess with Fern and with Wim for the rest of this episode. What were your thoughts about Jod? Because I would love to hear them. Your thoughts about Jod up in the tower trying to maintain control of the whole situation as he's starting to slowly lose grips on it.
Yeah, I do think, he's got, like you said, a mean streak in him, and he'll, because of what he dealt with, he does reveal. That was one of the mysteries revealed. Was he doing his Jedi levitation stuff with the keys, with Wim's kind of like, what does he have? Like almost like an iPad where he looks at his different Jedi stories and all those kinds of things, lifted that up. Force pushes. You start to realize, oh, wait, he does really have some force abilities, just never fully trained. But, he does say, and I know in the notes here you'd mentioned, Jod's backstory, and we'll get to that a little bit. But I would say this, when he talks about how, and we've talked about this really kind of a lot with the Acolyte coverage about good and evil and so on. And Jod says, look, here's what the galaxy is. It's dark with a few pinpricks of light. And so, he has a general view of that's how things are. And of course, his, Jedi master, I don't know if formally a master, but the Jedi who saw potential in him was killed in front of him. I mean, this is, that's traumatic stuff. And so I do believe him when he says, "Look, I don't think he wants to kill the kids. I don't think he wants to destroy all of Manhattan or hurt their parents. I think he just, do what you guys did before. Let's be chill. I just want to take the credits." I think he probably wants to do it just like Tack Rennan did. Tack Rennan took them over to Lanupa, right, and his own little stash in case Ad-Atten ever got shut down and he had no more access to it. So I can envision Jod wanting to do that. He'll threaten and stuff like that, but I don't think he wants to hurt the kids at all, but he wants the credits. He's sick of being hungry. He said it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad you went into it, because that's actually what I was wanting to move into next. Was we get Jod's background story revealed in these series of scenes there up in the tower, where he talks about how he grew up starving. He lived in a hole as a kid. He goes, "When I was your age, I was lived in a hole in the ground. I was starving. I was just trying every day not to starve." He goes, "Then the Jedi found me. And this Jedi said they saw potential in me, and they took me, and they basically insinuated they started to train him." And he goes, "But then they caught her, and they killed her in front of me and made me watch." And of course, that, like you said, would kind of warp somebody's sense of pride. So obviously, he had the Jedi training. He was more of an Ezra. This is potentially what could have happened to an Ezra Bridger if with the fall of Canaan. I mean, this is something we could have seen of Ezra at some point if Ezra wouldn't have had Hera and Sabine and Zeb to keep him centered.
True. Very true. Yeah.
And so this is, I love the mirror effect. The opposite sides of the coin. We have Ezra on one side, who lived an orphaned life, stealing to eat and trying to survive on Lothal. You have Jod Nawood, if that was even his real name, starving and living in a hole, both found by Jedis, both starting to be trained, both of their Jedi quote unquote masters killed. And yet Ezra still had his family. Then Jod was left with nobody. And the paths that they went on were so different from that point on. To me, it was quite a inspiring. I would say inspiring. It's definitely something to do with. I would love to get more on Jod and his backstory to do that side by side comparison between Ezra and Jod and their different journeys, because it's amazing how similar backgrounds, similar events to a certain point, and how reactions took them on completely different paths at that point.
Yeah, and just real quick, psychology corner, mini one here. We would argue here probably that we talk about protective factors versus risk factors, right? And I have covered this before. I don't know how many years ago, with some of the famous Isle of Wight studies done by Dr. Michael Rutter. In fact, I'm looking at one of his books right now on my bookshelf. But when you look at Ezra, there's more protective factors. Like you mentioned, he has Hera, he has Zeb, he's got Sabine, he still has a family. Whereas it sounds like with Jod, his environment was not the same. He had more risk factors in place than protective factors. So we could make an argument that's what really helped Ezra there. So again, little mini psychology corner there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Glad you did. Now, of course, while all this is going on in the tower, we have KB, who, when the power was turned on, was able to take off and fly off into space to try to send the message. And in the meantime, for cover, we have Neil, who has gone to a certain spot on At-Atten because he remembered that when he were on at Akron, that Hana showed him their turbo laser. So he knew where to look for it on Manhattan, since everything he's know is pretty much identical. And he finds it. And when power is restored, he starts using that giant turbo laser to fire on the pirate ship. He gets a few shots off before the pirates, of course, target it and destroy it, but Neil escapes before they did. But it was enough to get KB past the pirate ship and into orbit, where she calls Kim, which ironically, Kim is my sister's name. It's just not spelled like this Kim. It's fun. It is ironic. But I was going to make it sister joke, but I'm not going to. I'll be good. I'll be good this time. But KB calls Kim and is like, "Hey, Kim, it's me. We need help. Pirates are invading our home." And she's like, "You made it to Manhattan?" He's like, "Yeah, we did. Send your X-Wing friends." And she's like, "I'll call the New Republic. They're the best pirate busters around." And while she's talking to Kim, of course, their ship, the Onyx Cinder, gets nailed by some blaster fire as two pirate ships or fighters are coming out attacking them, which of course caused them to fall out of orbit and start spiraling back toward the planet. And of course, she's able to get a radio off to Wim to let him know that he got the message through, but she's hit and the ship's going down. And of course, Jod tells her to go tells them to go watch what they've done. And they run over to the window and they watch as the ship goes spiraling out of control toward the ground and goes behind some structures, and all you see is a big puff of smoke.
Oh, yeah.
And Fern lets out this big, loud scream, crying scream, "No!" because they just watched their friend crash.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you talk about a gut punch moment.
Oh,
KB, like I said, after that one episode, 2 episodes ago, what is it, episode 6, the Zero Friends.
yeah.
Zero Friends again. I mean, KB became really quick one of my favorites. And to see her go down like that, I'm like, oh God, not another tech.
Right. Right.
Not another tech. And that's the last we see of KB. And of course, Fern is like, I'm done. She's like, we got to get this barrier down so the Republic can get in. So she goes running to try to get to the handle. Jod shoots at him. Then, of course, Force pushes Wendell. And then it just all goes downhill from there because Wim tries to go for it, gets his hand on it to pull it to bring down the barrier, and Jod calls him, and he's got his lightsaber to his dad's neck. He's like, "You let go of that or he's gone." And of course there's that moment of hesitation, and finally he lets go and he goes to his dad. And this is the point where he actually shares the story. Because Wim says, "You're not a Jedi. You're a liar. The real good guys are coming." And Jod goes on the spill about the real good guys. They're not. Nobody's coming to help you. And then he tells the story of how he was starving and how the Jedi came and everything. And we got this moment where they're trying to figure out at this point what they want to do, and it's a very very sad moment because he's got a very dark look about the galaxy. Jod does. He goes, because he makes a statement that the galaxy is that galaxy, the galaxy, it's dark with a few pricks of light that's all you can hope for. And it's definitely, he's got a very dim look on it, which is the exact opposite of what KB or not KB, that Fern tells her mom, which is everywhere we went, even in the worst places, there were good people too. People that will help us. And I'm like, you have two people that have seen this. John obviously has seen more than Fern has, but two completely different outlooks on life. He only sees the dark, despair, and the gloom. And Fern is like, yeah, it was dark. It's scary out there. It's even in the worst places that we went. But then there's a hope. There's still good people out there. And I wanted to get your thoughts on just the vast difference in outlooks between John and Fern. And the child, I always would say Fern's has almost got a little bit of a childlike innocence in it, always looking for the best, where John's is just he's a broken man.
Well, we talked about it a minute ago, like with, depending on your upbringing, like when this is tough, right? Like when you look at the history of the planet, it's a tough one, right? I could go into like, how many hours do we have? Maybe this is I think I've mentioned this before, but C.S. Lewis is an Oxford and Cambridge professor. He's just staggeringly brilliant. It's unfair how smart he is. I've said this before on the podcast, but at the beginning of his book, The Problem of Pain, which tries to address this issue of why is there so much suffering on this planet, his initial argument to start the book is, he says, not long ago when I was an atheist, people would ask me, why are you an atheist? And my argument would go something like this. And he gives an argument. And I'm just going to tell you, whether you're a person of faith, I don't care if you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, atheist, agnostic, his argument is brilliant. And you will, read it. Anybody, go read it and see what he says. And you'll say, yeah, there is no God. And I see why he's an atheist. Why are we not all atheists? It's a brilliant argument. It's staggeringly brilliant. Mm-hmm. But he follows it up with what? He says, part of the issue is that the strength of my argument against there being any good out there, against there being a higher power, presents us pessimists or atheists with a problem. And I'm like, what is that? And he asked the question, if the world is this bad, how did humans ever attribute it to a good and benevolent God? He says humans are foolish, but not that foolish. In essence, he makes the argument that there's no reason throughout the history of time humans on this planet would ever look up and say, yeah, this is due to a good God. The data is not there. And like I think I've mentioned before on the podcast, he even says in the book, The Problem of Pain, just set this book down for 5 minutes and just contemplate that all the major world religions on this planet were started when there were no pain medicines, right? There was none. I mean, people suffered even worse than now. And so that's what helped me, Aaron, to a large extent, say, well, wait a minute, how is it that humans did that? And I think it's because of God in us. We've, mm-hmm. Talked about this. And so to say all this, do I get why Jod has his view? Of course. And you and I could have this view. This is a rough place. What's the old saying? The world will present you with an endless series of problems. You have them. I have them. Everybody listening to this has them. But, do you problem solve and go from there? Here's another one. I talk to my clients all the time about optimism, right? And pessimism. I've historically trended towards being a realist, not a pessimist or optimist. Be a realist. I want, trend towards more optimism, definitely not pessimism. But the reality is reality is not that great. Okay, so I say that all the time. And people are like, geez, man, you're being a pessimist. No, no, no. I'm being a realist. I'm not being optimistic. I'm not being pessimistic. And people are like, well, why do you say that? And I've said it before on the podcast. You and I have talked about it, Aaron. If reality was so great, why do people use alcohol, marijuana, pornography, gambling, food, sports, shopping, prescription medications, and cigarettes? Well, they use them because reality isn't that great. And I think, I've made an argument as a clinical psychologist and just as a human that if reality was better, then people wouldn't use all those things so much. But you and I see it. We see it around the world. We see it across our country. So again, I know I'm getting long-winded here, but again, we've talked about these issues. I would argue that even though this is a tough go, I would encourage people to be realistic, trend more towards optimism, not to the point where it's rose-colored glasses and everything's hunky-dory, no, but to have a balance there. Because I like what you said, Aaron. I think, Fern has seen it, perhaps a little bit more with rose-colored glasses because she hasn't had as much experience. But, I think when I think about your two daughters, when I think about my daughter and son or anybody listening, we're going to have a balanced view. We're going to say, listen, look out. This world's a dangerous place, but enjoy the beauty of it and try to have a good time.
Well said. Well said. Well said. So, well, let's keep the ball rolling because we're running out of time here. We still got a lot to discuss, and of course, how does this all end? Well, it ends simple. The ending begins with a punch. And Mr. Straight-laced, work-obsessed, keep everything in line, Wendell has had enough of Jod Nawood, and while he's got his back turned, gets up, crosses the room, and when Jod turns around, knocks him flat on his keister, which sends the lightsaber flying through the air and across the room. And of course, at that point, there's some struggling that begins to happen as Wendell then goes to pull the handle to destroy the shield, the barrier around the planet. And of course, Jod jumps on him and is trying to hold him back. Wim scrambles for the lightsaber, grabs it. And of course, I love it, the fact that they actually went through and included the fact that he actually stopped when he picked it up, looked at both ends before he tried to turn it on. Last time he turned it on the wrong way and it flipped out of his hands and nearly, cut him in half. But I love the fact that he actually stopped and looked at both ends to make sure he was pointing it the right way. But before he could activate it, Jod, using the force while trying to hold Wendell back, Jod reaches out through the force and tries to pull that lightsaber to him. And Wim is trying to resist and trying to stop, and he's fighting it, but he's still pulling closer and closer to Jod. Then of course, Fern jumps up and grabs the saber and starts trying to help him. And there's more struggling going on, and Jod is spending too much time trying to pull the kids that Wendell's getting closer to the handle. So he basically lets go through the force and grabs Wendell's hand and you see him start bending the fingers and stretching him out and pulling him back to keep him from grabbing that handle and pulling it down. And of course, when he lets go of the saber, the kids go flying because they are putting so much force into pulling back on it. And Fern sits up and looks at her mom, and she's like, "Mom, please, please." And next thing you know, while Jod and Wendell are fighting at that handle, you see Farrah's hand come on top of Wendell's and rip that handle down. And next thing you know, there's a bright light and there are a bunch of flashes. And it pans up to the sky, and you see the barrier, just flashes going off in the barrier as these satellites are being destroyed and shutting down, and the barrier falls. And everybody's standing out. All the citizens are outside looking up at it. The barrier is down, And all of a sudden, there's nothing but stars in the sky. And I think Neil had the best reaction, just looking up, going, "Wow." Because that's what everybody on that planet is thinking, because they've never seen those stars before. They've never had just a starry night sky.
No, never.
So they're seeing this for the first time, seeing this, going a little off course here, because I'm sitting there watching them and they're all gasping and staring at the stars. And I'm like, wait, if they've never seen a starry night, how did they have sunlight and daylight? Because if the stars couldn't get through, the sun couldn't gotten through to illuminate the planet.
Again, suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, I know. But it's just one of those things. Like I said, this generated more questions than it did answers here. This finale did. But it's still a fantastic finale. But then as they're staring up at the sky, the pirates and the citizens staring up at the sky, all of a sudden you hear the hum of X-Wings, as a half dozen X-Wings come swooping out of the sky. And of course, to my surprise, 2 B-Wings come in behind them. The X-Wings, I'll admit, the X-Wings did not surprise me. The B-Wings literally threw me off. Did not expect to see B-Wings anywhere in this, but we saw them. And not only did we see B-Wings, we got to see something that with the B-Wings that we haven't seen since Star Wars Rebels. We see them go and fire their enhanced I call it the Death Star type laser, but it's their combined laser blast cannons that kind of all come together. We see it in Rebels. It all comes together and fires this hugely intense burst that took out the capital ship, and the Imperial cruiser in Rebels. We see that in this, as it starts taking out the pirate ship from 2 B-Wings coming in at that, which leads me to believe that Hera and what's that little ship designer's name?
Oh gosh, why do you do this? Was it named after
not Chimere? What's his name? The little Akbar guy who designed the B-Wing.
Thinking of the real guy, Bill George, from ILM, and I think they named the character, don't they? After
Quarry.
Oh,
he was named after Ralph McQuarrie. Quarry. Yes. Quarry. He created the Blade Wing, which was nicknamed the B-Wing. Yeah, that's it. Quarry. I can't believe I forgot that dude's name. But Quarry, yeah, he's awesome. So, of course, they fly in, they take the shots, take out the pirates. And, of course, the pirate ship ends up crashing. And at this point, Jod is standing there and he just tosses his gun away because he realizes it's over. Any plans he's had, it's done. And he just kind of turns, and everybody, Wim and Fern, are like, KB. And they, of course, run to the elevator to leave. And their parents go with them. And as they get to the elevator, Wim turns, and I love this about Wim, because despite everything Jod did, how he mistreated them, how he took them captives, misled them, and just, especially in the last several hours of what was going on here, the way he treated them.
Oh, yeah.
Despite all that.
Yeah.
Despite all that, Wim turns around and still has compassion for him. He's looking at a broken man. Everything he's wanted is now gone. And he's distraught. You could see it in his face, or he wouldn't have just tossed away his blaster. And he's just standing there watching. And Wim turns around and he's like, Jod. And it was almost trying to extend an olive branch to Jod. at this point. Because, I almost think Wim thought there could be redemption for him still, despite all of it. But I loved that moment. Don't know why. It's a throwaway moment in the episode, but to me, it says so much.
Well,
that
I know I'm in the long spiel I just gave you, and you got listeners, forgive me about the long spiel, but I love that you brought this up because here's Wim leaning towards optimism, right? Like you said, putting out an olive branch. He just, threaten your life, your friends' lives, and to carve up your parents. Even he had tears and he's like, "You're a liar," right up there in the supervisor's tower. And so you see that in kids, and that's a good thing at times to see, right? There's still, Wim leaning towards, optimism, kind of like Fern as well. And you don't want that to go away. You still want that in people, to help us get through life. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh yeah. It was it was quite I don't know. I really enjoyed it. It was a moving moment for me because it still showed that there was kids are, if something happens, kids are going to be the first they're not going to hold grudges. They're going to be the first to forgive you. Yeah. And I think you see still that childhood trust in Wim.
Yeah.
And of course, Fern pulls him back into the lift and the doors close. And the last we see of Jod is he's walking up toward the window, staring out of the tower as he watches the pirate ship just falling toward the ground and crashing into the city. He crashes into the city and ends up in the river surrounding the city. And that's the last we see of Jod. Of course, after the pirate ship crashes, we end up finding the Onyx Cinder. It is crashed through the roof of the school and is just kind of hanging there from the rafters toward the ground. But the ramp has opened and there's a pile of credits that are just dumped on the ground. And on top of the pile is KB.
Yeah.
And she's just lying there. And of course, Wim and Fern run in and Neil meets them there and they runs in with them. And there she is lying there. And they're like, KB. And they run up onto the pile of credits and they're trying to check her out. And she's just lying there, lifeless, motionless. And then all of a sudden she looks up. She's like, did we win? Did we win? She wanted to make sure we were on the winning team here. And of course, everybody's happy. They're hugging, they're celebrating. And of course, all of a sudden you hear, hey, that's one of my best landings yet.
Yeah.
And it turns around and there's, of course, SM-33 kind of doing the whole Sleepy Hollow thing, the headless horseman carrying his head, which I thought was hilarious. And of course, Farah and Wendell come running up because they're sitting underneath the ship and the ship is shifting. And they're like, come on. I hate for you to be on this adventure and then just end up getting crushed.
That's right.
And of course, they pull them out. And of course, SM-33 comes walking out of the ship and joins them. And then there's a moment you hear the X-Wings again, and you see Wim turn around and he looks up at the X-Wings flying around, and then the big blockade runner comes cutting through the smoke as it's coming in to obviously investigate what's going on. And Wim just cracks this grin. Like, his whole, almost like he's found a new purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Through the whole thing, he wanted to be a Jedi, but now he sees the good guys are the Republic. So I think his goal has now changed, where he wants to be in the Republic.
Maybe so, yeah. Especially if he doesn't have any force abilities, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So I thought that was a great thing. So what did you think of this ending with the final scene with Jod, then of course the kids getting reunited and KB surviving?
Well, it was awesome. It was like a pressure cooker, and her saying, "Did we win?" really takes the pressure off, brings humor, brings relief. Okay, good. Okay, we can decompress. The good guys have won, and seeing that blockade runner, that's to me a real nod to episode 4. Seeing you know, seeing that ship, from different angles now, it's really cool. So it really does. It's just right. What does Doug Chang say? There's a visual language to Star Wars. So when you see that, and like you said, the X-wing and the B-wings, it's really trying to say, hey, this really is, even though they've been off and separated, this really is part of the Star Wars galaxy. And yeah, I think the ending with Jod, um, kind of like, you're saying, what are we going to see there? You see a slight smirk. You feel like he's not changed his ways. He threw the blaster down, but the security droids are not working. So
No.
probably try to sneak off planet, or have, some of the pirates come and pick him up, because like you said, they love him. But they'll think, you know what, we can probably get back here and get this treasure. It's still there. We know where it is. So I think there can be more stories about him, as if they want to do that. But yeah, it's a great ending, and it answered some things. They didn't answer what happened to Wim's mom. That was a mystery we didn't get answered. We did find out that Jod does have force abilities and stuff like that. Found out who the supervisor was, and went from there. But no, I love the ending, and the laughs, and it was wonderful to see not only the kids be heroes, but then they pulled their parents into that adventure, and the parents were heroes too.
Oh yeah, definitely. Now, there's two more topics I want to get to, and we're already starting to run a little long, and I want to hit on these. One, the end credits.
Yeah.
Because this is something we did not see through the rest of the series. The end credits for this episode starts off animated. We get different animated scenes.
Yeah.
That are very intriguing for me, because it's like it's trying to tell a story, and you see Jedi and a master and apprentice, and you see them training, and you see them working. Then you see obviously a Sith or an Inquisitor or somebody with a red lightsaber fighting one of the Jedi. Then you got one of the Jedi the Padawan holding the Jedi, obviously looking like they're gone. Then it cuts to the kid standing on the Onyx Cinder.
Yeah.
Did they just tell us Jod's story?
I didn't pick up on that until looking at our show notes. You and I throw stuff into show notes, and we get them prepped. I did not pick up on that, but as you described it, and I started thinking back about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe they did. Is that your take? Do you feel like
That's kind of what I'm thinking. We may have just seen Jod's story basically somewhat fleshed out in about 20 seconds of animated art?
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool.
Which really blows my mind, which even more makes me think the topic of the final question I want to get to: will there be a season 2? Now, we don't speculate. We don't do anything like that. So, and this is very much, if you, on the base of it, is a speculative question. Will there be what could they do with the season 2? Well, what questions are left unanswered? What happens with Jod? What happens to the kids? What is Wim now obsessed with joining the Republic?
Right.
What happens to At-Atten now that they're exposed to the galaxy? There are a lot of questions that they have left blatantly open that give them the option to either A, do a second season, or B, spin-off stories. So, and which I find intriguing. So I decided to do a little bit of research because I've had several people tell me, and I don't know where they're getting their information, but they're telling me, oh, this series is rated lower than the Acolyte. It's not doing good at all. They'll never do a second season because it's rated so badly. Oh, okay. So let me do some research here. So I went to our good old trusty friend, Rotten Tomatoes, and I decided to do some checking here. Okay. So I took a look at every Disney live action series Star Wars has done. Okay. So we know The Mandalorian has multiple seasons. There's been 3 seasons to date. So, of course, if you're not familiar with Rotten Tomatoes, there's 2 scores on Rotten Tomatoes. There's what they call the tomato meter and the popcorn meter. Tomato meter is basically your critics, how your critics rate the show. And popcorn meter are the fans. So Mandalorian is rated at 90% by the critics, which is decent. It's actually pretty good. Mandalorian's rated 90% by the critics and only 78% by the fans. So then you had Book of Boba Fett. Book of Boba Fett was a 66% critic rating and 49% fan rating.
Right.
Then we had Andor, which was a 96% critic rating and an 87% fan rating, which I'll go ahead and stop right here and say, of all the series, that is the highest rated series out of all of them.
Okay.
By fans and by critics. Okay.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan Kenobi was next. It was 82% rated by critics, 61% by fans.
Okay.
Then we had Ahsoka, which was 85% critics, 64% fans. Then we had Acolyte, which was rated at 78% good by critics and 19% by fans. So then that leaves us with Skeleton Crew.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, Skeleton Crew's finale was, at the time of our recording, was a couple days ago. And it's the newest of the shows. But as of today, the day of our recording, January 16th, 2025, Skeleton Crew is sitting rated fresh on the tomato meter by the critics at 91%.
Okay.
And the fans have rated it at 81%. It is the second highest rated show by fans and by critics out of all the Star Wars series. So the potential, what does that mean? That tells me the potential is there to see more story because everybody loves it.
Yeah.
Will it happen? Can't tell you that. I don't know. Disney's got a lot of financial issues. Disney Plus has a lot of financial issues, and they're trying to move more toward theatrical releases. Does that mean we won't see more? No. Does it mean we will? No. But of everything that's out there, I think we'll most likely see something with these characters sooner rather than later.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So, just my little thoughts there. So,
Well, good deal.
so anywho, anything else you want to discuss before we start wrapping things up on this finale of Skeleton Crew?
No, I feel really good. I like how you ended that.
So, very good, very good. Well, let's go ahead and jump into our final reactions. I'll go ahead and go first because, man, I got to tell you, now it's over. The season is over. And I can honestly say I 100% agree with my initial estimate a few episodes ago. This is my favorite out of all of the live action Star Wars series. I absolutely love what we got from Watts and Ford. This was absolutely incredible storytelling. It was absolutely incredible acting by these kids and by Jude Law. Fabulous action, beautiful effects, beautiful backgrounds. And I hate that we haven't done this, but in all these reviews, we haven't even really talked about Mick Giacchino and his absolutely incredible soundtrack to this show, because it was spectacular. I mean, we can do a whole show just talking about the music very easily, but he did such an incredible job bringing the story to life through the music. I mean, I cannot sing the praises of this show enough. And I keep, if you have not watched these episodes and you're listening to us, first off, you've just spoiled everything for yourself. But secondly, thank you for listening. But thirdly, go watch them. It is worth every minute of this show. I mean, it is so entertaining. It is so heartwarming. It's so fun. It definitely brings in a lot of nostalgia, a lot of it. Okay, it makes me feel like a kid again. Really does. I really enjoyed it. So that's my final thoughts there, my final reactions. How about yours, David? What are your final reactions to the real good guys and to Skeleton Crew as a whole?
Yeah, I say this series was a blast. I am absolutely thoroughly impressed by the story that Watts and Ford told. And I'm not going to repeat all the superlatives that Aaron said, because I agree with him. With the acting with the kids and so on, and Jude Law. But, I wanted to share this. I thought this might be a little bit of a way to, think about this is, I hadn't done this yet, but I asked a coworker today, and her husband are huge Star Wars fans, and I asked her, well, did you and your husband watch it? And she goes, yes. I said, well, what did you think? And she said, quote, it was kiddie, but we liked it, unquote. And it got me thinking, was it kiddie or was it for all ages? Particularly with some of the stuff we talked about in the last episode when he shot Brutus, the threats, towards the kids and the parents, and even at kind of in this, what we hope is the season finale, the threats with the lightsaber to Wendell's throat. Is it all kiddie? I think, or is it all ages? Acolyte was not kiddie. You and I talked a lot about the deep issues that series brought up. I would argue it wasn't for all ages. I know Dan Z wasn't going to show that to, I think Mason. Maybe he has now. I'm not sure. Maybe he will in a bit, but. It got me thinking about that whole issue, Acolyte or Skeleton Crew and what appeals to people. I know for the last several years, my son, who's in his early 20s now, he's said after seeing Vader at the end of Rogue One,
Hmm.
which is an incredible scene, that he's wanted an R-rated Vader movie where he does more of that kick butt stuff. Again, at the end of Rogue One, this is even before, Deadpool and Wolverine came out. Disney and Marvel went with that, and
Hmm.
will that work or not? Disney, Marvel has delved into that before, but for Disney to give the okay for that, it ended up being what the highest grossing R-rated movie in history, I believe, right, this past summer. It worked, right? People were okay with the violence, they were okay with the vulgarity, right, the swear
Hmm.
words, etc. Um, and Disney, they've been struggling, and that ended up being a hit. Of course, Inside Out 2 was a hit. They had not had any of those for a while. um, it could have backfired on them, but it didn't. And all this leads me to wondering if Disney and Marvel will look at doing more of the all ages like this, because across the board, you and I know that this Skeleton Crew, even beyond Rotten Tomatoes, has been really well received by the fans. Um, um, I don't know. Will they do more of this, right? Or are they going to look at a R-rated Star Wars movie? I've always thought they would never do that, but I wonder if they will. Just throwing it out there, but just kind of something to think about. Um, I'll say this. Going back to it being, for all ages, I've always wanted to do Star Wars with my kids. Um, I met Aaron at out 3, 4 in the morning, Disney's Hollywood Studios, waiting to get into Star Wars weekends. And Aaron and I started texting with each other, and I have both my kids there, and I brought them to a bunch of Star Wars weekends, and just so thankful I got to meet Aaron, and I'm podcasting with him now. Um, and so I say all that not to bore people to tears, but to say that what was special for me with this series is my daughter watched every episode with me. She wanted to watch this series, and she made the effort to do just that. Okay. I don't think I've really watched any of these with her or my son, for various reasons, their ages, school, etc., work, all that. So I'll definitely have fonder memories of this series because she watched it with me. Um, so I'm so thankful for that. This show really appealed to her. Now she's 17 years old. She's in high school, but she's Neil Nation, baby. She's ready. Um, so look, I very much want a season 2. I'm not, like Aaron said, I can see arguments for it and against it. I hope we'll get it. But we've got Andor season 2 coming up here in April, and it'll be interesting to see what Disney does after that. What, 12, right? I think 12 episode season 2 of Andor. So crossing my fingers, and we'll see where it goes. But there's my final reactions to this episode 8 and the series.
Very good. Very good. And of course, we want to hear from you. Let us know what you think of Star Wars Skeleton Crew series. You can do that multiple ways. Of course, any of our social media at Carabast at SW Reactions Pod on Facebook and X. You can also find us on Blue Sky and Instagram and Threads and X and YouTube and Pinterest and Tumblr, all at SW Reactions. You can also email us swreactions@gmail.com or send us a voicemail at speakpipe.com/Star Wars Reactions. We would love to hear from you. Of course, David, if somebody wants to talk Star Wars with you, how would they go about doing that?
Absolutely. Twitter X is the main place. That is at David_Modders, Modders. The other one is our show socials, right? Aaron and I are working on saying that 5 times fast, but you can check any of those. Of course, Instagram. I got to get more active, but I almost feel like I just need to start looking at Blue Sky maybe some more as well. So I think a lot of people are over there, but yeah, Twitter X and our show socials, the Star Wars Reaction socials, and Aaron always gets those to me.
Very good. Very good. And of course, besides contacting me through all of the show socials, you can reach out. Hey, I did it. You can hit me up on my personal X at TAHarris121079. Would love to hear from you. So, David, you know what that means.
I'm ready for it. I'm not going to bypass it this time. I'm embracing the Star Wars Dad Joke of the Week.
There we go. There we go. It is time for the Star Wars Dad Joke of the Week. Got to end the show the same way every time. So here we go. What is R2D2 short for?
Oh, I don't know. What is R2D2 short for?
Because he has stubby legs.
Wondering if it was going to go to that. No. Oh, yeah.
He's got stubby legs. David, buddy, this has been a blast.
Absolutely, man. It's a great time. It was great to get another series under our belt.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you all so much for joining us for this episode and all episodes. We appreciate y'all so much. We love y'all. We're praying for y'all, wishing y'all the best in this new year. We, of course, want to continue to encourage you doing the best you can for each other. Be kind, do kind things, just be generous. Man, with your time and effort, just be generous with people and kind. Just keep making the world a better place, one person at a time, one day at a time. It'll make a world of difference, not just for the person you're helping, but for you as well. Remember, this is your place for elegant discussion for a more civilized age.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or by Lucasfilm Limited. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars. All names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and the respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Star Wars Reactions unless otherwise indicated. Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age.